Today, we are pleased to feature Dr. Cejna Quist-Jensen, an associate professor at Aalborg University in Denmark. Uh, Dr. Quist-Jensen is a leading researcher at the intersection of membrane technologies, water and wastewater treatment, and resource recovery for mineral processing. She has coordinated and contributed to several Horizon Europe projects focused on advancing membrane-based solutions and membrane technologies for water reuse, wastewater valorization, and mineral recovery. In this interview for the MSA newsletter International Engagement section, she shares insights from her career journey, her work translating membrane research into real-world applications, and her perspective on where membrane technology is heading in mineral processing and water recovery. Welcome, Dr. Quist-Jensen. So before we start, I would like to call you Cejna. We already work together, so if it's okay with you, I would like to call you Cejna.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you very much. So let's start with your background, and I would like to ask what led you to Aalborg University.
Yes, I'm actually from Aalborg, so the university is very close by. But actually, I went first at another university, but then I took my degree here at Aalborg University first as a chemical engineer, and then I was doing my PhD in Italy at the Institute on Membrane Technology and University of Calabria, and then I had the opportunity to go back home as a postdoc. So that's why I returned to Aalborg University in 2016, and then I've been here since that time. But it's because I'm from this area, so I just returned back home.
Yeah, great. So you start working on membranes during your PhD, right?
Actually, it was much before. It was actually during my bachelor degree.
Oh, wow.
So yes, so here in Aalborg we have like this problem-based learning. That means that every student they work in groups from the very first semester. And then when I did my bachelor, I actually worked on membrane technology with forward osmosis for phosphorus recovery. So I started many years ago, and then I just got the opportunity to continue this work. And during my master degree, I would like to continue to work on membranes because I really like membranes and like what I did during my bachelor degree. So I got the opportunity to go to Italy at Institute on Membrane Technology during my master degree. And then I just learned on how to do membrane distillation, membrane crystallization for resource recovery. So it's actually since my bachelor degree that I started working on membranes and has just continued. Can
Yeah,
you continue that? Yeah.
great. Thank you. So how exciting. So I mean, it actually encouraged me to ask what drew you to membranes as your core research platform, because you already started you started working on membranes very early when you were a bachelor student.
I just found that it was very interesting also because it was, at least from my perspective, it was quite new, and this like using membranes for resource recovery, I found that very interesting. So it was just from an interest point of view that I started to work on membranes, and somehow that still continues. I'm still very interested in membranes, and I really like the area, and also my colleagues, of course, that I have around the world that are also working on membrane. So I think we have a very good community of membrane specialists around the world. So yeah, it's from an interest
Great.
perspective that I started. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, from your experience, what are the key differences between developing membrane solutions for water or wastewater treatment versus mineral processing and resource recovery?
I think the perspective change, and I think like at least here in Denmark, it went from that we should just do wastewater treatment or water treatment. So that was the goal. It was treatment for discharge. But the perspective starts to change also with the more focus on circular economy, focus more on what resources that we have in the society, what resources we have on Earth for different things. But I think now, yeah, the perspective changed. So it's a more like, can we really use the resources that we have in the wastewater? So it's not just treatment for discharge or treatment so we can put it into landfills or something like that. So I think the perspective has changed, and that is where we as membrane specialists or people working in membranes, we have a huge role in taking part of turning waste streams into resources. So I think it went from just a treatment perspective to more circular economy perspective.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, I'm sure, I mean, it should be a role model in many other countries. So we shouldn't look at the, I mean, wastewater as a wastewater. So it's kind of it's a, I mean, new
It's a
source for
resource.
recovering. Yeah, it's kind of resource
Exactly.
for recovering everything.
Yeah.
So, which membrane processes are most central in your work?
I focus mainly on membrane distillation and membrane crystallization. So that is my focus area and where I do many of my projects. But it's, of course, it cannot be as a standalone technology. So it often comes like either with other, often also other membrane technologies as pre-treatment or eventually also post-treatment, depending on what is the goal of the resource recovery. And again, that is something that actually came since I worked at the Institute on Membrane Technology in Italy, where they also focused on membrane distillation. So I learned this technology from them, and then trying to develop it further here in Denmark.
Great. So I will come back to membrane distillation and about the future of the technology later. But I'm sure our audience would like to ask, what has been your most important real stream lesson when moving from lab feeds to complex brines and effluents?
I think one of the most important streams is actually working together with both local industries and other industries in Europe, like this, working together with industries for the industrial wastewater treatment. I think that has been quite interesting because, of course, we do also brine mining and trying to convert seawater into resources. But I think there's a lot of untapped resources in industrial wastewater. So that is where my research also is moving now, is more to the industrial wastewater stream. So that is where it, of course, becomes more complex when we move from synthetic solutions to real streams. But I think we should do it more often than we are actually doing in research, because we there will be new opportunities also. Of course, it will be more complex, but we are not just developing for publishing a manuscript or something like that, but we are developing to make impact
Yep.
for the industries and for society. So I think it's something that we need to do. So I will say that the industrial wastewater streams is very interesting, and there are so many different industries. So
Yeah.
there's not one stream that's the same.
Yeah, yeah, and each one is a new story, and I mean,
Exactly.
we should learn about them and understand them, the
Yes.
chemistry of the brine and the fluent. So, you have coordinated several Horizon Europe projects. How do you shape a project idea so it stays scientifically strong while delivering practical outcomes.
Yes, of course, it's a long process just to develop the project and develop the proposal. So we use normally around 6 months to develop such a project. But what's very important is that it's developed together with industry. So we as researchers, we have a lot of ideas. We think there's a lot of opportunities in some technologies, which is good. We should do that. But it's important that industry are always involved to say what is their needs, what is their requirements for the technologies and so on. So it's really a co-development of the project. So there's of course always universities involved that focus on the more scientific parts, then the industry that focus on the industrial requirements and the needs. And then we have to meet. And in my experience, it's not that difficult actually, because what I'm doing is also more applied research. So I work on a relatively high TRL, uh, um, around 4 to 6 sometimes. So it is some technologies that are also ready to be implemented in industry. But for example, for membrane distillation, it's also important that we have some waste heat or some alternative energy sources available. And that's again important that this is co-developed together with industry, because that is where we can close the gap. So when we develop these projects, it is really important that it's not my idea, it's not my concept, but it's really a concept developed together with industry. And what I experienced is that we can still keep the scientific level of the project, because we have our knowledge. We have, as a researcher or as researchers, we have our knowledge, we have our expertise. So we of course put that into play into the project. I think that's important. But this co-development is really the key point here.
Yeah, collaboration. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a key point here. So I would like to stay with Horizon Europe projects because you have a lot of experience with them. I mean, and these projects are really big with several partners, as you mentioned, industry partners, universities. I can remember sometime we were talking about 18 partners from industry and universities. So how do you manage
Exactly.
as a coordinator, as a lead CI of the project, how do you manage interdisciplinary consortia? I mean, in terms of academy, I mean, industry, utilities, when success metrics are different?
Yes, so the success metrics are different. That is something that we have to remember. But we also have to remember that we want to create value for all the partners. So it's actually thinking of value creation. So what industry wants is maybe to increase their water recovery. It's to recover some of the resources in the wastewater, for example, if you're talking about industrial wastewater. That is their metrics and that is their value. But how can I use that? I would like, as a researcher, you would like to maybe publish manuscripts and so on. But we can meet. So it's not like that they're completely different, but it's to understand what are their needs, what is my needs, what is the need of other partners. So to understand it from the different perspectives that we have in the consortium, that is very important. And I would say in the projects that I have coordinated or participated in, everyone is interested in making the project succeed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not like that we are trying to compete each other, don't want to make each other succeed. We really want to make it work. So to having that positive collaboration vibes in the project is really nice. So I think it's about creating value for everyone and to understand what is the needs of the different partners.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, collaboration instead of competition.
Exactly.
Probably that's one of the miss part of the collaborations and projects. So thank you, interesting experience. And looking back, which project most influenced your research direction?
I would, of course, as a researcher, it's very important that you get funding and you continue to get funding. So that is part also of our job beside the actual research. So one of the most important projects is a project that I got when I was just newly appointed associate professor. It was from Quist-Jensen Foundation, and they gave me some funding for developing my research stream. And that research stream was to develop membrane distillation and through also 3D printing and trying to see how can we recover resources um, as an integrated part in the process. And you know the project very well, Mohammad.
Yeah.
So this was probably the career defining project for me. But of course, there's also like the first project that I coordinate as a Horizon Europe project, the cornerstone on industrial wastewater treatment, also very important for me. And another one beyond battery on battery recycling. That is where we take where membrane technology might not be the central role, but a very key player actually in battery recycling, where we can use membrane technology. So I would say the first project is very special because that was somehow the project that set my career direction. But of course, every project that we get is a good project. It gives us the opportunity to focus. And yeah, all the projects that I'm doing is centralized on membrane distillation, membrane crystallization, and that is just a technology that I love. So that is really, it's just, yeah, that's very nice to be
Great,
able to
great.
continue.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much. And so you named some projects. I mean, Cornerstone and so the Horizon Europe project on battery recycling. So for your current projects, these are the current projects that you've been coordinating. So what are the headline goals? So I mean, new streams, new membranes, new material for membranes, new integration, or scale up approach.
It's actually a little bit mix of everything. For example, in Cornerstone, it's the integration. So that is actually where we have the possibility to really try also on a larger scale to integrate membrane distillation, membrane crystallization with other technologies like nanofiltration, heat exchangers, and so on, directly into a real industrial environment. So it's both the integration, it's the scale up of the technologies. It's also testing new streams. So it's a mix of many things that we're trying to do in this project. We don't have um, development of membrane materials, so we use commercial membrane. So that is not a key part of the project, but the integration, new streams, and scale up is important. And then for the other project on battery recycling, that is actually a new stream. That is where we take and use membrane distillation to use, there's a long process chain for battery recycling. It's very complex to do that. So it's also a bit different than what we normally do with membrane technologies for water and wastewater treatment. Because here we have to work in very acidic conditions. So that is a challenge. It is different metals and minerals than what we see, for example, from brine mining or industrial wastewater treatment. So it is a challenge, but I'm sure that the membrane technology will also have a key role to play here.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Very exciting. So when we're talking about these projects, so it comes to my mind to ask you, what do you see as the main barriers to adaptation of membrane technology today for larger scale applications?
Of course, it's different from membrane technology to membrane technology. I think, for example, nanofiltration have quite good possibilities to be implemented very fast, and the same for reverse osmosis. They are more common technologies. But for example, for membrane distillation, I think one of the barriers is this heat integration. So what we have to do is to think this in from a very early point. So we cannot just tell that because we often show that on lab scale and semi-pilot scale that the technology is working. But if we don't have the heat available or not able to integrate the heat within the process, then it becomes very expensive. So we have to co-develop the technologies together with industry.
Yeah, yeah,
So
very.
that is, yeah,
Yeah, you
that
go
is
ahead, please.
approach. That is an approach that I started to look more into how we actually do that. So we have projects where we of course focus on the membrane technologies, but at the same time there's a focus on the real integration into industry. So that can be the heat, that can be how we treat the needed volumes and so on. So there is this industrial integration along the development of the technologies.
Yeah,
But I
exactly,
think that's
exactly.
a barrier.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. So, if you could change one thing in how the community approaches membrane R&D for water and wastewater treatment, mineral recovery, what would it be?
I think from membrane community point of view, I would say that we often develop, for example, membrane materials for small scale. So that is one of the things that we should look more into, scale up and faster scale up and innovation within this area. And then again, we should focus on the integration into industry at an earlier point, I think. Uh, Again, this about co-development of projects together with industry. I think that is an important part, because sometimes we are just the membrane community that has our own ideas and concepts, but we really need to see who is the end users of our project. But that said, it's also important that we try to push it from a fundamental point of view of fundamental research that is not only like the mission-driven research, but also the fundamental research. So it should be a balanced thing between fundamental and applied research.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, we just ends up to the last question, and I would like to ask you, over the next 5 to 10 years, where do you expect membranes to have the biggest impact?
I think membranes will have a big impact in many different settings. So I could really see this entire recycling processes where we have not thought about membranes before. So it could be battery recycling, e-waste, those kind of industries where it's not a liquid stream from the beginning, but during the recycling process, often it will go to a liquid stream, and that is where membranes could play a huge role. I also believe from industrial wastewater treatment that, at least what I can see here in Denmark, the industry is also are more they're more willing to actually see the potential of membrane technologies, again because membranes can be used also for resource recovery and not only water treatment. So I think in Denmark, at least, we focused on other technologies before because it was just for treatment to discharge. But when we can use it for more circular economy, more recycling, membrane will have a key role here. many technologies will not be able to do that other than membranes. So I think that is very important for us to be also for the industrial, not wastewater treatment, but industrial circularity, industrial recycling of resources.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was an interesting interview. I'm sure our audience will enjoy it and will learn a lot from invaluable experience you shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammad.